Hi, welcome back to my channel. I have contemplated for a very long time how I would start this video to give it all the justice that it deserves. I've decided on one thing, and one thing only, is I met Tyrael. I think that's all that needs to be said for the intro. So, me as a newbie continued on the journey in Diablo 2 Resurrected, and I have completed Act 2. And without further ado, I will just say that was very interesting. Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for the huge feedback on the video and all the interest that you guys had in it. Thank you all for the comments and the tips and the clues and the advice and everything. That was very helpful. Half the time I don't know what you're talking about yet, but I'll figure it out. But in the meantime, thank you very much for that. I want to start off with the map. Okay, the map I was so excited for the map because it was supposed to be in desert outside area, and I can understand that desert can be also dark, but I was excited because I was finally gonna have more daylight. Oh boy, was I wrong, especially on the account that a massive eclipse would happen and I would still have to enter a lot of dungeons, which is fine. So the maps didn't feel any lighter, but sure, look, was not a deal breaker. It was still very enjoyable. I thought the maps were very familiar feel to it, but it also felt new, which was really which was nice. It was nice to look at. I didn't feel, as I said in a previous video, super on autopilot where it's like you're constantly doing the same thing. It did feel a bit new. We talked about these bugs with electricity. Who thought that was a great idea? Who thought that was torture? That was absolute torture. I almost got bombed by the first squad I ran into. And I don't even want to talk about the lair. I just don't even want to talk about the lair. I did not have fun in there. It was interesting. It was well put together, but I did not have fun in there as a caster. Another point I want to make is the gear. Some people in the comments said that the gear can be unfavorable, or at least the drop rate. And in my case, that was sadly true. I just feel like my RNG was terrible. I did not get any upgrades in my gear. That's also maybe because of a different scaling to the power strands when it comes to socketing and creating, adding your gems to these items and stuff. But I said to myself, I was playing Act 2, and I was about 20k away from having 100k gold, and I was a good chunk into Act 2 when I thought I'm gonna get 100k before I even get an upgrade, because I went so far into Act 2 without a single piece of gear upgrade that would be better for me or specialized for me as a necromancer. Not a deal breaker. I could still get through the map just fine. So I didn't feel like I lacked in power, but it would have been nice to receive something as a compensation for all the work that I've put into it, all the effort I put into it. I'm sure it's a small issue in the long run where more gear will be given and all that, but for somebody who's kind of playing this as a newbie, I would have felt a bit better being a bit more rewarded in regards to gear. Now, when I'm talking about the gear and the socketing, and it does seem a little confusing, I'm not gonna lie, okay? The way the NPC described it, I have tried it, so I have experimented with it, and of course my thought process would have brought me to, okay, well, if I need 6 little ones, then maybe I need 6 blue ones for the blue tier items. But no, that is so not true, is it? That is so not true. One of my viewers has then helped me in this case and explained to me that that is not how the system works. Okay, so I have a lot of experimenting to do, but they have kind of hinted me towards the fact that only like common items, you know, the gray or the whites, I think, are able to be created, or the sockets are able to be added onto it, and you cannot do these with any green, blue, yellow items. And to me, that feels a little counterproductive, because maybe that's just my experience with gaming, but whenever I receive an item that is in a different color, I automatically take it as, oh, that must be an upgrade, or that's a different tier, or that's a different level of an item, and it has more perks, or it has more, you know, attributes to it. But in this case, that is not the case at all. It seems that they would prefer you using crappy items, very common items, create your own sockets, and add your runes to it. Where I would have preferred to see my gear all nice and yellow, all of it, and tiered out and socketed out. So that kind of doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel rewarding in that sense. Now, again, this might be a small issue compared to the rest of the game. So maybe later on in the game, I'm going to receive more yellow items or special items that have more sockets where I can put my runes into them. But for the time being, this is what I have been hinted towards, so it doesn't necessarily feel right for me, because I have a blue item, cool wand, necromancer wand, but now I have to downgrade and use the runes that I have on a basic tier wand. So in my brain, that just doesn't really connect that well. Again, I'm probably gonna make another video in Act 3 and be like, well, that goes out the window. But yes, those are my thoughts on that, and I'm still experimenting with it. And I know you can create better tier gems if you put them together and all that. So like, I'm working my way through it, and I'm learning and experimenting with it, which I feel like is also a positive thing to the game, because it adds another element of experimentation, which is great. Okay, another thing I wanted to add was a viewer of the stream yesterday has asked me to do a specific thing, and that was to, I think it was press O on my keyboard. Okay, shortcuts, not my best friends. And that would open the equipment for the mercenaries. Oh, I will disclaim this, I might have just missed it completely, okay, because my brain was just thinking about how to play this game instead of just what all the features there are. But I wasn't aware that you can also gear your mercs, your mercenaries, which is a lovely benefit. It's a nice W for the game to add, because that means you have just another NPC that can tank some damage for you, especially if you're a caster. So I can really appreciate that, but I wasn't aware of this, and I wouldn't have been aware of this unless I would have accidentally pressed it wrong, or it would have either come up somewhere in the game, or, you know, a viewer would tell me. So I was going, I think it was 90% of the Act 2 that I had done until I was told this, and it's not a big deal. It's not very taxing, because I only spend, I think it was the 3,300 gold on reviving him every so often, and it wasn't super often. Maybe it was more often than I should have. I don't know, but it wasn't terrible. So I didn't feel that bad about not knowing that, but it would have been nice to know it beforehand. So maybe it just wasn't built in, the knowledge wasn't built into the game as well, or I just completely missed it, which is very possible as well. Money. Let's talk about money. So in the previous video, I stated that I didn't find a great use for the money as of Act 1, and it was just piling up. Well, turns out I indeed was yet again wrong. And that's good, because it's an aspect of learning the game and learning all the things you're going to need your money for, like dying constantly at the last boss, continuously, multiple times. A lot of people with serious amount of experience in this game. Y'all wished me great luck with the last boss of Act 2, and I was very excited for it. So the last boss, I have died on that boss more times than I care to admit, but it was definitely less than 6, I think. Anyways, I had enough money saved up, obviously, for all the debts. But the last boss was more of a brute than anything else. I didn't think, or at least I didn't have enough time to figure out the strategy to the actual boss. I just went in there the first time. I panicked and then I tried to leave, but I couldn't find the door, okay? So I had to use a town portal, which was also suggested. I just attempt that try, so I did the town portal thing, okay? So I died numerous amount of times, and instead of trying to figure out the boss, I spend more time on planning out how I'm going to go in there. I'm going to open up my town portal. I'm going to deal some damage. I'm going to curse some, use my skills to do as much damage to the boss as possible before I have to leave again. So it wasn't the case of what does this boss do? It was how can I survive this boss instead, which isn't necessarily a good thing in my opinion, because I would have preferred to be in there and try to figure out the boss and see what his fighting style is, or how can I stop myself from dying so quickly, or am I doing something wrong? There wasn't enough time for me to try and figure that out. It was about surviving and surviving only. So maybe it's a gear issue, maybe it's a skill issue, maybe there's so many different variables to it, or maybe the game was just built that way, or maybe it's the case that a paladin would have more of a chance of surviving because maybe their gear is better, stronger, they have more defense and armor and such. So I'm not exactly sure, but from my perspective as a necromancer, all of my Skeletors and my golems and my poor merc just, they tanked up all the damage. I did as much damage as I possibly could within the space of a few seconds before I had to TP out again and basically repeat the system, repeat the process over and over again until he was dead. So overall, I would have preferred to be in the room with the boss and just experience the boss a bit more than having this kind of sort of a cheat, you could call it, just by using the sidebar mechanics, not necessarily the team fighting mechanics, if that makes sense. So not a deal breaker, to be honest. I thought it was fairly rewarding to kill it after a few deaths anyway. I was very excited about that. I was also very tired by then. It was like 12 o'clock at night, so I was just like, I was running on the last juice, and I just needed to kill this because I was finishing Act 2 whether I would have been asleep on the keyboard or not, okay? So when I did kill the last boss, I was very excited. I needed a minute. I really did. And of course the loot dropped. Better to say it did not really drop. I've received a long sword and a ring. Okay, so when I checked the ring, it did have a lot of attributes that I could use, which was great, but I would have preferred if at least the last boss loot would have been specialized for the class that you're playing, and maybe you could have used the sword as necromancer. Okay, maybe you can use it in a world where you rank up your other strengths and so on. So maybe you could, but in this case, I didn't feel that the loot really felt that rewarding to the fact that I died so many times and I put so much effort into the boss. Maybe I shouldn't have died that many times, I don't know. It is what it is. But yeah, so the loot I would have, at least for the last boss, if there was more specialized loot, that would have been great. But again, not a deal breaker. I feel like the loot is one of those type of things where because there's so much more to the game, what I have now is going to be irrelevant in 2 hours time, for example, or well, in my case, probably 12, but it is not as relevant in a long run. Okay. So it's not a big deal, but I just like seeing those yellow items come out and getting an upgrade and feeling better about myself and feeling stronger. But my last point to this, to Act 2. Okay. I was not prepared, as Illidan would say. I was so not prepared. When I watched the trailer for Diablo 2 Resurrected, I already picked a favorite character, okay? Easily. easily. It was this angel looking guy that I loved the gear on him, and oh, he looked unbelievable. His name, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Tyrael. I was not ready. So when I checked my journal and the quest wasn't complete, I almost had a panic attack because I was like, I am so tired. It is 12:10 at this point. I just want to go to sleep. And one of my viewers said, the last bit is 1 minute, no monsters, you can do it. I was like, all right, we're doing it. We're finishing it. It's not going to take long. And when I seen his name come up on my mini-map, I lost it. And here's a little clip of the meeting from yesterday. Hold up. I feel like this deserves walk. Oh, yeah. No. No. Holy fuck.
Greetings.
It's like I've seen my favorite character. What are you talking about? This is insane. This is insane. The gratification right now is unreal. Okay. I feel like seeing him there was so much more rewarding than killing the last boss of Act 2. And maybe that's just a personal preference, but it was so gratifying to see him there after I killed that boss. I don't know. I didn't expect to see him at all. I don't know why. I just thought maybe he was part of the first one and we might not see him in the second one, or, you know, maybe he's going to be on later on. But seeing him in Act 2 this early on in the game, oh, it was just a cherry on top of the cake. That was unbelievable. And I was so excited to see him. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to sleep after this. So I was so happy to see him afterwards. It was such a relief. When I seen Tyrael, I was very excited and I listened to the story. And first of all, what do you mean you expected me earlier? Like, I tried my best. It's like the game knew that you were going to be failing over and over again. But you know what? I tried my best. I died like 4 or 5 times. Anyway, I made it eventually. And it was... The voice actor was interesting. I would have expected something different, but that's just preference, right? But I really enjoyed the story. And what I want to say is that the game seems to reward you more with stories and context than it does with items, gold, and such, which is really interesting and refreshing at the same time, because it is very gratifying and it's very fulfilling to receive another piece of information for this whole story, especially when it feels like it's such a major part of it. So I feel like that part that I got to meet him and he got to tell me this next part of the story was way more rewarding than actually killing the last boss or receiving the loot. So, well, I didn't realize that until after I met him, obviously, but it's definitely a different take on a game where you'll be rewarded with more information than actual loot. So yeah, and I think that brings me to the end of Act 2. First thoughts. I'm still very excited to go to the next one. I'm terrified of the next boss. I really am. I need to go back and make as much money as I possibly can, just so I can die more often, because I'm afraid I'm going to run out of money and then I'll never be able to play again. Anyway, so yes, thank you very much for all the comments and the views on the video. It was very exciting to see the feedback and how welcoming the community is in regards to new players joining the game, or at least learning about the game. I hope it was somewhat educational, or at least entertaining to watch me struggle, which people seem to tune in on the stream and watch my suffering. I appreciate that very much. So I appreciate all the subs, all the follows, all the thumbs up, all the likes, all the comments, all the support you're giving me. So thank you very much. Any more tips, any more comments, you know where to leave them. Thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next one.